Okay, so this question, estimation questions, they appear usually in Google interviews, but usually they're like not a question they ask you by itself, but usually it's part of a product design question. But in any case, they ask you, hey, estimate this market or estimate this or something like that. Sometimes it appears by itself, but I think less seldom these days, based on what I've heard. But it's very important, though, that you have this skill down. And, I've been doing this for a while, and I found different methods. And this is the method that I found really foolproof. And is what consultants basically use when they go to their clients and try to explain them, what's the size of this market. So let's start with, I'll tell you what the structure of this, which is, so the question is, estimate the revenue of Google AdSense. Mind you, this question, it's crazy, but I think it was asked on the phone, which is kind of really strange. But it may be asked on the real side interview. But in any case, one structure that I find really good is, in the method that I find really good is using estimation trees, and maybe some of you are familiar with that. And the structure that I suggest is ask clarifying questions first. The second one would be like, state your top level approach. And by that I mean, top, like at the high level, what are you going to use to get the final result? What components, right? And then state your assumptions. If at this point you have any, you need to state them. Then draw the estimation tree. Start drawing it. And then you go and calculate bottoms up from the tree, from the leaves to the root node. And then at the end, you do a sanity check. By that I mean, hey, if you have a piece of information that will help you, sort of like have a benchmark to compare your result, that's the point where you use it, right? And this is really critical, right? Just giving the answer and not giving a sense of whether you are right or wrong is not enough. They will ask you, how do you know that you're right or how do you know that you're wrong? Anyways, let's talk a little bit about what the interviewer is looking for, right? What do you think the interviewer is looking for? I would love to hear from you. What do you think why they're asking you this question?
What I've heard is it's particularly efficient in a meeting to be able to estimate numbers to come up with a conclusion to a problem relatively quickly. Mm-hmm. Rather than saying, "Oh, I'll get back to you with an analytic, response from another team." And so it's just quickly being analytical and
a way to convince somebody probably of the opportunity or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I think you will be in some situations where you really will not be able to find data. Maybe the data itself is not there available for you. Mm-hmm. But you still have to take a strategic decision based on either common sense or your own understanding of the way things work. Mm-hmm. So that's where I think this will be very handy.
Mm-hmm.
I think it also, this is Robert speaking, I think it also in the real world comes in helpful when prioritizing. Lots of times when you have a big list of ideas, you'll often come across ideas that sound really great, but the actual impact it has in terms of number of people can be rather small. So being able to do quick estimation helps with that.
Excellent. Any other thoughts? Right, I think that those are absolutely accurate reasons, right? Why they would ask you that. So in essence, what I think they're looking for, they are testing you for this. Okay, if you're a PM and you're in a room, are you able to actually do this because of all the situations that you're going to be in which that you need to do it, right? And so what they're going to be looking for is, what they're testing you on, and do you have a method? Are you methodical? Methodical.
Yeah.
All right. The other one is going to be, can you support your assumptions? And by that I mean, and this is really important, right? When you're doing the estimation, and you say, hey, I think that it could be anything. Like if you're estimating the size of cheese market, if you say, hey, you know what, I'm going to estimate this by, the number of people in the US or families and how much they consume cheese. And then you go and you say, hey, you know what, I'm going to use myself as the moderate cheese user. I usually, eat cheese like maybe every day with a sandwich. So I think like a pound a week, would be something, that I would use. That like gives the interviewer a sense of like, oh yeah, I get this. I understand what you're saying, as opposed to just coming up with a number without justifying it. Okay. So supporting your assumptions is important. The other one is, are you articulate? Are you articulate, and can the interviewer follow you? And this is really critical. And this is why the estimation tree is really good, and you're going to see why, right? But if you start getting into the numbers and getting into the weeds, and the flow is lost as to what you're doing, the calculation for, that's the end of the interview.
Yeah.
Okay. So
can I just add something to that?
Yes.
I think, this thought came to me just now. I think as a product manager, you are like a product owner, and you are probably the only one who has and who should be having a very broader picture in terms of, what is the value of building this product, and which means that you have to pull in a lot of things to estimate, for example, in this case, revenue. You need to pull data from various different, segments in your organization. And since you are in that role, you're expected to have that kind of a broader understanding. But of course, you can always check it with the respective departments, whether that is the right number, right estimate or not. But you should be the driver, in a sense.
Right. Absolutely. And the other thing is, so can interviewer follow you? That's it, right? These three things. Now let's look at let's start doing this, okay? Clarifying questions. Now, the reason why, and you're going to see this, but the reason why the tree is so useful is because the tree allows you to state what the multiplications, additions, and everything that you're going to calculate, just how the flow will go from the leaves to the root node. And then once you explain that flow, now you can start putting numbers on them. So for the interviewer, when the interviewer sees this and you start calculating, everything is completely clear as to what you're doing. This is much better than start writing equations horizontally. So let's do this. Let's start with ask clarifying questions, okay, here. So, clarifying questions. All right. So here I have my own clarification questions, but let's go with you guys. What would you ask, like, for this? Things that you don't understand, or,
So are we looking at US revenue or worldwide?
Okay.
And also revenue based on device, is it mobile or tablet or PC, desktop, that sort of thing?
Who am I talking to right now? Sorry.
This is Kaushik.
Kaushik, okay. All right, good. I'm gonna add my own here, which is, the first thing is, I will confirm that my understanding of AdSense is correct. Okay. So my understanding of AdSense is that it's part of the Google Network Members program, and so I would, and that is websites that are not part of the Google properties, right? So I would ask, okay, these are not Google websites, and I will just confirm that. Okay, and the reason why I'm asking this is because, the ad revenue, just a gut feeling, will depend on the ad space on websites. So I need to find out, if I'm going to go a certain way, how many websites there are. And then I would ask, is this, that Google has search ad and also display ads, right? And they charge differently. And my understanding is for the Google AdSense, for websites, it's only display ad revenue.
Yeah, I think that's a good question.
So I would ask that, right? And then I would also ask, should the estimation excluding revenue share, which means, they call it the traffic acquisition cost, and that's what they pay the publishers, right? It's part of the so if the advertisement gets clicked, right, then they're going to give the publishers like 75%, even 80% of that cost, right, of the CPC. So my question would be, is this revenue excluding or including, right, the revenue share? Any other questions?
Can I ask a question there?
Yeah.
I'm not particularly interested in like AdSense, and I might not think about that revenue share cost and how the actual marginal revenue with Google is different. If I don't ask that question, is that a fail? I mean, I guess I would go through the AdSense and be like, this is what I know about AdSense, but I would probably miss that.
Yeah, it will show only how much you know about the industry, right? And will you fail? Well, if they compare you with somebody else, right, and that person takes into account more details like this, probably they will consider that person that has more in-depth, knowledge. I wouldn't consider like a totally bad thing at all, because I think what they're looking for is actually whether you can break down the problem into pieces and actually compute the estimation. But it can show those sort of in-depth type of thinking, right? Because you have the publishers that they're giving this ad space of their websites, right, for marketers to put their advertisements. So how are they getting the money, right? How are they getting money for their space? So that shows that you are thinking, okay, are we talking about Google revenue only, or are we talking the entire, publishers and the revenue that Google does? Okay.
Yep.
So, all right. So these are like top questions. Any other questions? Clarifying questions?
Can we ask? I don't know if it will be very fundamental. Do the publishers pay per click, or is it per some?
That's a good point, right? So yes, that would be a great question to say, hey, are we talking about,
Cost per conversion or cost per click?
Are we talking CPCs or, impressions, right? Now, it happens that actually, when you have a display, and I don't know if you have that knowledge, but if you have an advertisement, right, you can charge both. I mean, it depends on the marketer, how the marketer wants to use that ad, right? So the marketer can say, hey, I just want to pay for impressions. And another marketer, hey, I want to pay only for clicks. So it's up to the marketer to do that. So usually in websites, it's not up to the publisher, right? It's up to the marketer. So they want to
the price kind of varies what assumption we take. Like if we have to take a split between CPC versus impressions, then we need to allocate the right weightage and then multiply it with the right.
Correct. But remember that they're asking you AdSense revenue, right? So you ask this question, I would be very careful because they would expect you to actually say, hey, you know, so this is ad revenue for AdSense. And AdSense includes, you know, CPCs as well as impressions, right?
Yeah.
So, okay.
Malena, sorry to interrupt. For item number 5, can you please elaborate what is this revenue share and where does it happen here?
So, you know, if the CPC, let's say that the CPC is $1, right? Okay. Well, Google gives you 75% of this, so 0.75 cents, $0.75 to the publisher.
Publisher of the content?
Oh, the publisher is the owner of the website that has ad space, right? So if you have a publisher like New York Times, okay, and you see these advertisements here, right? The New York Times.
Yes.
Okay, that is called, you know, ad space, right? It's like I am renting my website, okay, to Google, and Google can place an ad here, okay? And this goes through the Google Exchange or the Google DoubleClick or whatever.
Okay. So I kind of like, so it's not beyond what you see on just the main Google site or properties. You also have to take into consideration basically ads displayed on other properties, but sort of like being run by Google.
That's this question. That's why I asked this question here, to make sure that we are on the same page.
Okay.
These are not Google websites, okay? Because Google AdSense, it's only for the Google network. Okay? And the Google network is composed of third-party websites, not Google. Okay?
Not Google.com, right?
Not all the websites that are not Google. That's for
okay. Got it.
Okay? If I'm the New York Times, I'm renting my space here.
I wonder if any Google sites has any ads on them. I'm
sorry?
I just wonder if there is any ad on any Google webpage.
Yeah, of course, they make more money on Google properties than on
than the ads. Yeah.
So so Google properties is a different story, right? You have Gmail, YouTube, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So but then it's not called AdSense then?
It's not called AdSense. No, that's Google's own properties where they have display revenue, right?
But you can still bid for those, right? Bid for placing your like advertisement or bid for like having. Okay, but it's different. Okay, got it. Thank you.
But AdSense is for third-party publishers.
Okay, thank you.
Now the way it works is that you have Google DoubleClick or their exchange. And marketers come in, they place a bid. This happens in milliseconds, okay? And whoever gets wins the bid gets to place their ad here, right? So they place their ad here, and then when users come in and click, boom, Google charges, a CPC to the publisher, right? I mean, to the marketer. So the marketer pays some money, and that gets partitioned into the publisher and Google, because Google is providing all the technology to make this possible, right? To do the bidding and all the stuff. So what Google gives to the publisher per advertisement, it's about 75%, and this is called the TAC, okay, the traffic acquisition cost. Weird name, but is their share. Okay, so is that understood?
Thank you so much.
Okay, so now that we have that clear, let's start with the top level approach. Okay, so what's the approach? This is my approach. You guys may have another one, but this is the way I would think in a very simple way. What you want to do here is to, in simple words, tell the advertiser how are you going to calculate this at the high level, right? And so the way I would say is like, you know what? This is my approach. Ad revenue for AdSense, to me, the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to say, hey, I need to know how many publishers there are. And then each publisher will generate some revenue for us. Ad revenue, right? And I will calculate this ad revenue per day. And the reason why I'm doing it per day, because I think it's going to be easier to figure out how many people going to a website per day and see how many ads they're going to see per day than to start thinking about a month or a year. And then I'm going to multiply this by the number of days in a year. And that will give me the total ad revenue. What do you think? That's what I would ask. So is this clear, what I'm saying?
So I was thinking of another approach based on like how many people in the U.S. and then making that assumption that it's just U.S. and then maybe I could proportionally make it global. But then how many times do they click on these non-Google properties, and then just guessing at a $10 per ad, coming up with I think the numbers I was coming up with were like roughly correct, but it's really, that would probably take me 2 to 3 minutes, and I don't know if that's too high level and not nuanced enough.
So because I cannot see how you did it, the one thing that I would try to find out from you is how you calculated the number of clicks, right?
Right. So yeah, that one I was thinking is like, oh, these properties are, that is also just a guess. I would have just said, assuming that people click on these once a month. And that's what the usual behavior of users are. They don't click on ads that frequently, but that's the big guess, I guess maybe.
Yeah, I think your approach is the same approach I'm taking, right? Mm-hmm. Except that I'm going to show the details underneath it.
Right. Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
So, but at the high level, what I'm saying here, the takeaway is that the approach should be clear at the top, right? Because this is how you're starting with. You're saying, I'm going to find out how many publishers there are, the ad revenue per publisher per day, and then the number of, days, and that would give me the AdSense revenue for the year. All right. And I'm assuming here this is worldwide. It's not, I'm including all devices, everything. And yeah, so all the stuff. So, and then if the interviewer agrees, which to me this seems logical, but maybe, does it seem logical to you?
Just one other thing, sort of a question / clarification is, when we talk about AdSense, shouldn't we also think about other exchanges as well? And then AdSense would be a percentage of the total number of revenue, the total revenue that's made per year. So if there's AdSense and a few other exchanges, they all make a certain amount of money per year. And that's across the number of publishers times ads per day times 365 that you have here, right? If you know what I mean.
If you can figure out how many ad exchanges there are and how much they get from, because it looks like they're sort of like an intermediary between the publishers and Google, then yeah, I have no idea about ad exchanges or how many there are or how much money they make or anything like that. So I wouldn't know how to do it. And I don't know how you did it.
I was thinking maybe since Google is one of the big players, the ad revenue that you have there with Google AdSense would probably make 50% of that. But that's just my sort of estimation.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
50% of the total, in the sense that total ad revenue that's made per year in the US Google AdSense would probably make 50% of that, because Google is a big player, and we have to factor in the other exchanges as well.
Yeah,
So
I wouldn't go into that, because that seems to me like very there's no, you cannot support your statement, right?
Yeah.
And remember, ad revenue in the world, I think it's about $25 billion, okay, or even more.
okay.
Now, if you know a little bit about Google, and I suggest that you look at their 10K, okay? Like 80%, 85% of the revenue is search ads. It's really a search content, okay?
Right.
50% is split into, GCP, hardware, apps, Nest, and then the other one is AdSense. Okay, and this is about 5%. Okay, just to give you a sense, Google makes about 100 billion a year, or a little bit more. So this is about 5 billion. Okay, so and the advertisement market, which is this. Probably even more. It's not 25 billion. It's probably like, 100 or more, 200 billion, right? If Google is making so much money. Make sense? So I wouldn't know how to start thinking about, this piece AdSense, getting that number from the total market.
On the other hand, Milena, I think your formula, and it's a little bit hard to see because there's a reflection, but basically I think you're taking number of publishers, multiplying by, and I don't see what's there.
Yeah. This is the top. I haven't done anything, right?
Okay.
So this is like the top level. So I would start talking and say, hey, this is the way I'm going to do it, and now I'm going to put the tree here. All right. So
just a thought. I want to continue. I think with the logic you're bringing, but just when thinking about the competition, the one way I would have defended it is like, it's Google, Facebook, and then there's everyone else, and they probably have 80% of the market. So that 40 to 50% overall shares, that's how I would have backed it.
It just sounds really arbitrary, because basically you're saying a lot of probably in your sentence, and then you're saying because it's Google and Facebook, they have 80%.
But that's what they have.
That does not logically follow. So if your statement is this, each person, let's say, each person on average goes maybe for 2 hours a day to browse website, and then they click maybe 3-5 times. You can more or less back it up saying, I do this, or some friends I've seen do this. But if you arbitrarily throw numbers, unless you really say, I read in this publication that this is what the breakdown of the market is, you can't really just throw the numbers around saying that's kind of probably sounds like what it is. And then you may not even have the numbers. So it has to be some sort of, what they're looking for is, because I can say just probably revenue is like whatever, and just throw a number. And so I'm a little bit exaggerating, but basically they want to see you build up a very strong case, very thoughtful, versus like, hey, that's what it's like without like real backing.
So let's Kaushik or Luis, send me your approach, and I can look it up, and maybe we can discuss it. Let's continue with this quickly because we have little time.
Sure. Yeah.
Maybe you can see the similarities with what you have. Okay. So let me see. Where's my tree? I just built it today. All right. So So at the top, I'm saying, okay, this is what I'm calculating at the top, which is AdSense revenue for 1 year, okay? And then I say, okay, so I'm going to do this by dividing this revenue into these components, okay? And I'm going to say, hey, I talk about my approach is number of publishers, times the revenue per publisher per, per day, right? Times 365 days. That's sort of the approach I was taking. But I'm gonna say, you know what? How many publishers are there? In the Google network member. Well, I don't really know. I don't have that number. So, but I'm going to do the following thinking. Okay. If you look, I'm gonna use the 20-80 rule, which is usually 80% of the revenue. And this applies to several things. But I'm pretty sure that 80% of the revenue of Google AdSense comes from the 20 top companies, the 20 top publishers. Okay, and I'm going to, since this is usually applicable to these kinds of systems, especially when you look at the most viewed publishers, okay, like the New York Times or Huffington Post or CNN, right? Those are really the top ones that people go, like at least 20, right? So I'm going to make that suggestion. I'm going to use the 20-80 rule and say, hey, I'm gonna see the top 20 companies, the top 20 publishers. Okay, and then I'm going to multiply here by the ad revenue of each company, per day. Okay, and I'm going to multiply by 365 days using this 20-80 rule, right? And I'll say, okay, so what's the ad revenue here for each company? Well, we have two types of advertisements. We have the click ad revenue, and we have the impressions ad revenue. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add them, okay? So now for the click ad revenue, how am I going to calculate the click ad revenue per day? Remember, this is per day. This is per day. Well, I'm going to do this by thinking about, number of visitors per day, times how many number of click ads that advertisers, decided to advertise on. So click ads seen by the visitors. And then the percentage of those ads that they saw that they're going to click, so that's your CTR, plus the cost of each click. Now, remember that there are click ads and impression ads, right? So how many click ads, like if you go to your New York Times, I'm pretty sure there's some ads that advertisers only bid for impressions, and there are some ads that advertisers bid to be click, right? So since I don't know exactly what the balance of that is, I mean, who knows what that is, I'm going to assume that, 50% of those ads are actually click ads. Okay, and now I'm going to calculate how many ads, a visitor will see when they visit, for example, the New York Times. And the way I'm doing it is like, hey, a way I can understand this is every time I go to the New York Times, I probably see like 5 articles, and I only do it once a day. Okay, I'm going to use myself as the average person. So by articles, I mean, I see, I see number of articles or pages. Let's put these pages. And then per visit. And I'm going to multiply this by the number of advertisements per page. And then, as I said before, I'm going to assume that because I don't know any better, I'm going to say that 50% are actually click ads out of these ads that I see on these pages. Okay. And the question here that I would ask my interviewer is, does this seem reasonable to you? Does this seem reasonable to you? Do you follow what my assumptions?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
So my general question here is,
yeah.
What is the recommendation around how deep we should build this tree? Because for every element that we have as a leaf node right now, we can always come up with different categories. For example, CTR, if you can further categorize them as power users, like people who really click all the ads all the time, versus someone who who never wants to click any ad. So we can divide our
CTR is an average, right? So you can say my assumption is this is an average CTR, right? And it takes into account any kind of usage of user.
Yeah. So my question is, we can further divide that, like we can have another layer of other level of leaves, which can actually come up to that average CTR. Like you made an assumption.
Nobody would do that, right? Because I think that's what CTR is for. It's capturing that kind of average usage, right? Because CTR is really an estimate of billions of of clicks, right?
Yeah.
So I would go further than that.
So I wonder. I guess I had the same exact question, and I want to. And this is the guidance that I've received, and I wonder if you can confirm or deny this.
Mm-hmm.
You should try to do the estimation in 2 to 5 minutes.
Okay.
What is that? Do you think is that correct or incorrect?
I think that you should do the estimation quickly. Okay. And the most important thing is that you go to a process where you can support your assumptions, right? And not go into the weeds, right? So I think that, having up to this level is fine. Going further is not.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
I think it really become very difficult to backtrack and come to the root.
Well, this is very simple, right? These are multiplications. I'll show you in a minute, okay? Yeah. But the most important part here is actually explaining your assumptions and how you're thinking about it, okay? So here now, again, I'm going to say, okay, this is going to be the number of visitors today, number of impression ads seen by these visitors, and then multiply by the cost per impression, per 1,000 impressions, and I'm dividing by 1,000 because I want to get the cost per one impression. And here is, again, very similar to this branch. I calculate here, okay, what are the pages, number of pages visited, the number of ads on that page. And then again, I'm assuming, because this is 50%, this has to be 50%. So 50% impressions, 50% click ads. And that's how I'm doing it, okay? So now that I explained this, because now your interviewer has to be clear on every single operation here, right? And you're going through the assumptions. So this is the opportunity to go through your assumptions. And now I'm going to go and do the calculations, right? So you go now bottoms up, and you say, okay, let's start with the pages that I visit. I'm going to use myself as the average user, right? usually I visit like 5 pages, let's say on the New York Times, which is a big publisher. I look at the pages and I see about 5 ads. That's my guess per page that they're showing me. And this is times 10.5, right? So this is what? 525.5. So that means that this is 12.5 over here, right? And how many visitors per day does the New York Times or these top 20 publishers have? I know that the New York Times has about 10 million subscribers. Okay. So that would be, and the New York Times is usually below Facebook when it comes to publishing. Like a lot of people. So I would say that would be the top of the line. And then you have these other 20 publishers. So I don't know exactly, of course, how much, but just to be conservative, I'm gonna guess average 5 million. 5 million. Okay, for everybody. So 5 million visitors per day. CTR, and you have to know these numbers, okay? So look them up because you don't want to be guessing on here. But I know that CTR is about 0.5 for display ads. Okay. And CPC is about 0.5%. So this tells me, okay, so I have 5 million, and and here's where you have to also make sure that you have your calculations right. So 5 million times 12.5 is about 60 million, right? 60 million divided, multiplied by 0.5 is 30 million. So 30 million and 0.5% of 30 million, that's about 0.15.
Wait, is it 50% or 0.5%?
0.5. No, it's 0.5, right?
Oh, 0.5, okay. So
0.5. So it's 0.15 million. Now let's go to impressions. Okay. Let's start again at the bottom. Same thing, 5 pages. Imagine it's the New York Times, 5 ads. Again, this is 0.5. So this is 12.5. CPM is usually $1, right? And here we have 5 million visitors, right? So here you have, let's see, 5 million, this times 12.5, that's 60 million, right? 60 million divided by 1,000 is how much? It's 0.06, right?
600,000.
0.06. So this is 0.06 million, right? And so you add this up, right? And that gives you 0.21 million right here. And I said that I was going to do this for 20 publishers, in 365 days. So what's the total here? It's 20 times 0.21 million times 365, right?
Okay, I'm sorry. What was the explanation on the box on the left? Publishers.
Like the top 20 publishers.
Oh, top 20 publishers. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm doing the 20/80 rule, right?
Gotcha. Yep. Thank you.
So okay, it's 20 times 0.21. So that's 40. That's 4 million, right? About 4 million times 365, right? So that's how much?
So in your approach about, in your assumption of 20/80, 20 is like the 20% of the total publishers, right? But here we are taking 20 as a raw number.
That is correct. That's a very good point.
Yeah.
And the thing is that I look at the 100 top publishers, right?
Yeah.
I should have explained that.
Yeah.
I look at the 100 top publishers and I look at New York Times at the top, and then I look at a very tiny one at the bottom, right?
Yeah.
And so I was saying, hey, there are 100 top publishers.
Yeah.
That really, I think that's who they comprise, the Google Members Network.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to take the 20. But that's a very good point.
Yeah. Thanks.
That's good. All right. So here we have, okay, 4. So that's 4 times 3, that's 12, 4, 6, that's 24, 4, 5 is 20. So that's about 1,460 million. So that's about $1.5 billion, right? And I said that this comprises about 80% of revenue, right? So total AdSense revenue would be 1.5 billion divided by 0.8.
1.75 maybe.
Hmm?
1.75 maybe, or 1.9.
So how much is that? That's 15 over 8, right?
Yeah.
That's about 2 billion, right?
Yeah, close to 2 billion.
Close to 2 billion. Okay. So, and now they say, hey, Malena, so how do you know that you're right? And that's where your knowledge of the 10K of Google should come into place, right? You should read the 10K before you go to that interview. And you say, hey, you know what? This seems to me be low because I know that Google AdSense is about 4.9 billion. Okay. And then you say, okay, so where did I go wrong here? It's not bad, it's not that off.
Yeah.
I can say, you know what? Well, I'm only counting 20 publishers, right? Maybe it should be a little bit more, right? That could be one. Or maybe I'm not completely good either on the 5 million visitors. Maybe there's a little bit more. So there's a give and take, right?
Yeah.
But you have to do your sanity check, right? And explain where you would look to actually find out the real number.
So is sanity check always based on the facts that you already know, or is there any other way?
Yeah, it has to be based, if you know as many facts as possible, that's best, right?
Okay.
You definitely need to know CTR, CPC, that's a given, right? If you're going to Google, it's an ad company, right? But this 2080 rule, all the stuff, that's okay, right?
Okay.
At least you have to give some reasoning, right?
Yeah.
But I think the most important part that I wanted you guys to take away is, look, this is foolproof. You come with a tree, you explain to the interviewer, this multiplied by this, multiplied by this. As long as they follow you on the tree, they cannot negate your calculation afterward, right? Then you say, bottoms up. And you see how easy it is, right? Boom, 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 you multiply, get to the top. And that's it. That's the total calculation. And this is much better than trying to do this in a long equation, right? It really gives the flow and actually leads the conversation, right? To give your assumptions.
This is super elegant. I love this tactic. Quick question. What if I didn't know, like I would have assumed 1% CPC, and I would have actually probably gone like $1 or 1% click through and 1% CPC, just because they're like easy round numbers, and I don't want to trip over that. And I know that they might be incorrect.
Yeah.
But at least it's going to make my calculations easier. And
no, that's okay. I mean, if you say 1%, you're not too off, right?
Okay. And then on the validation, just a thought. I mean, I used to do case interviews for strategy consulting. A tactic on validating is like if you're doing a bottom-up approach, this is kind of a bottom-up approach. Might want to do a top-down and just like, revenue in ads is this many billion, and I think this was probably okay given like these assumptions. That's probably a good.
And
that's how people gut check it.
That's the top down that I did, right? So if you will Google year revenue for 2015, and you say, hey, 85 comes from search ads.
Yep.
And 15%, and then you say blah blah blah. Like 5% comes from AdSense, and then you say, you know what? They made about 105 billion this year. So this should be about 5 billion. That's sort of like the top down.
Yeah, so like sometimes an estimation, sometimes I'll do top down on the estimation, and then I'll do the bottom up to do the gut check. It's just you can reverse it to do the gut check.
Yeah, and that is good, and you can do both, right? But if you just show this, they'll be like, no, because they're looking for your thinking about the different ads that are there, and you're thinking about, well, how are you going to calculate this? You have to calculate the number of clicks.
So I let me ask you this. So I'll do the top down, but I'll break the top down to the same level you just described. It'll just be like further segments, further groupings, just a couple of notes down. So it'll be just as complicated. It just starts at a different place. Do you think that could be bad, or is that okay?
I think that if I have a candidate that shows me this, and a candidate that just does a segmentation but doesn't go into, the methodology of how to come up with that number for that segmentation, I would pick this candidate, right? Because it will show more detailed thought process, more insights as to what's the advertising business about.
Gotcha.
Any other question?
No.
No?
Good. Yeah.
All right. If you guys have a different approach, let me know. We'd love to learn.
No, I think this is really foolproof, as you said. I never thought about approaching, estimation problems this way. You cannot go wrong in this. Even if you go wrong, you can always adjust for later. Yeah.
Exactly.
This is definitely good. Yeah. Thank you so
All
much.
right.
I guess I had a question. Because all of us are interviewing a variety of different companies that operate in a variety of different spaces and industries. What may be the best way to absorb?
Sorry, Cassie, we cannot hear you very well.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, much better.
Sure. Let me repeat. We're going to be interviewing at a variety of different companies that operate in a variety of industries across the board. I found it very difficult to obtain and memorize and retain key pieces of knowledge that would be used in product and regarding the company. And so my question to you is, what would be the best way to learn each industry and have nuanced insight that I can utilize within the interview process?
Mm-hmm.
I know for consulting interviews, what I did was I would read Wall Street Journal. Every time I would read a farming article, I would just make a couple quick insights and things that I picked up on a piece of paper that was only about the farming industry. But for tech, it's like quite difficult, and because there's a lot of
when you're going to interviews, what I think is that everything starts with strategy, okay, with competitive strategy. And so you really need to look for information about the market and the competitors and what strategies each company is using. And the best sources for that are three, okay? And if you are in a company, they probably have access to this information. They have subscriptions maybe to this, which is IDC, which is, a market research company. All of these are market research companies, right? And these companies have incredible reports about the market and the state of the market and the competitive landscape. Okay, so that will give you an edge, right? So IDC, and this is very, very numbers oriented. They compute market size and all the stuff. Then you have Forrester and Gartner Research are really also good companies in order to understand, again, the competitive landscape, but they put a little bit more qualitative knowledge into it and more nuance, okay? They're not as numerical as IDC. So when I go to market to understand market share, market size, I go to IDC. If I want to understand the competitive landscape in terms of strategy, I go to Forrester and Gartner. But these three are your best bet. Of course, it costs a lot of money, right? To have subscription to this company. But if your company has a library and you have access to that, well, I'll be reading those like crazy.
And then as a quick follow-up, I was recommended to read Stratechery every day as to beef up my product knowledge. Would you recommend any other blogs or areas to read up on every day to build a product sense?
I would get Feedly. what I read is I get Feedly. And in Feedly, you can put all kinds of feeds, right? From TechCrunch, Get TechCrunch, Mashable, all the usual suspects, right? And read that. And then there are some blogs for product managers, right? And these are like there are some famous. You can Google. There are some famous top 5 product managers that write really good articles. Definitely Andrew Cheng. I think he's fantastic. He's fantastic. So all those guys.
Thank you so much.
All right. All right, guys. I'll see you next time.
Thank you so much. Love it. Lovely and elegant approach. Love it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Malena.
Yeah.